Hello and welcome to our 3T at 3, our third Tuesday at series event for September, Cybersecurity, Enough is Enough. I'm Allen Falcon, CEO of Cumulus Global, and I want to thank you for joining us here either for this live online session or if you're viewing this on demand from our resource center. As we get started today, a couple of reminders that the audio is muted to prevent any background noise from getting in the way. So if at any point in the time you have a question, please use the questions window. There's an icon on the top or right-hand side of your screen. We do leave time for Q&A at the end, and I'm able to stay on a little bit longer to answer your questions if need be. A reminder that the session is also being recorded. We generally get things posted, processed, posted through our website within 24 hours. We'll send out a thank you note with a link to the recording. Feel free to share it if you've got colleagues and you think they would find the information valuable. And of course, as I like to always do, you'll notice, I'll remind you about our resource center. We've reorganized it a little bit and added some additional kinds of content. So please head to our website and check that out. We're publishing at least, generally trying to publish at least one ebook or white paper of current relevant topics in our resource library each month as an example. Additionally, we recently launched weekly bulletins that give you updates on what's happening in the world of Microsoft Cloud and Google Workspace, particularly geared for small and mid-sized entities. So it's a good way to get a summary, 3 to 5 items each week that we think are relevant, likely to be relevant for how you use the tools. This can be everything from new features to tips and tricks to upcoming improvements to the product you may want to be aware of as well. So please check that out at your convenience. So diving into the topic today, when we wrote the description, I started out by saying we'd cover our security CPR model. This is both a model as well as a defined set of curated security services, particularly tuned to small and mid-sized organizations. And what's key about the model is it really defines, 3 legs on the stool that let you build a solid cybersecurity foundation. And we talk about, security enough is enough. How we answer that question or assess and process that statement really depends on your tone of voice, right? Security, enough is enough. I mean, enough already. We get hounded constantly by the need for more security. There are new security requirements. When's it ever going to end? But it can also be a question, is enough enough, right? When is enough enough? How much do I need given my business, my industry, my risk, my profile? So when we talk about when is enough enough and how to be secure without getting fed up with everything you need to do, we'll put it in the context of our security CPR model, which has 3 components. The C is communicate and educate. Prevent and protect is part 2. P and R is recovery and response. And so we dive a little deeper into this model. Communicate and educate is really getting you and your team to understand that you do have a problem, that even small businesses are likely to get attacked at some point, whether it's a targeted attack or you just sort of get caught up in the big wave of a global phishing attack, and that human behavior can help solve problems or can increase your risk, and the understanding that no prevention or protection is perfect, that even if you put in reasonable measures, you still have some risk and you're going to need to be ready to respond. Now, protect and prevent, that's when technology takes the lead. And that's really the combinations of tools and services that work to keep people out and make you less susceptible to attack, but also in the event of attack and people start to get in or there is a compromise, it can stop the attack from proceeding. A great example of the latter is multi-factor authentication. Someone in your company clicks on a real-looking email from a client or a vendor, provides user information, password information. The hackers then use that to get into your system, but with 2-factor authentication, they can't because they don't receive that code or they don't have you set up in the Authenticator app. And so there can be a partial breach or compromised credential. MFA is a way to stop a cyber attack from progressing. And so protection and prevent are both stop people from the outside in, but also prevent it from spreading or stopping it once people are fully in or partially in. The third CPR component of CPR is the R, it's respond and recover. Now we talk about, recover, it's often how quickly can I return to operations, which is how fast can you get your business up and running, even if it means you're doing things manually until you can get your systems fully online. And then you do the repair work and the cleanup work You might need to do forensics. You might need to rebuild systems. It can be complex. You want to return to normal operations. And normal operations isn't just having all of your data. It isn't just having all your systems recovered and up and running. It's that your data is restored, and anything you've had to do manually or out of your systems while you're returning to normal operations has also been updated. So your data is not just restored, but or recovered, if you will. It's been restored and is now complete to the current point in time. A while ago, we did an analysis of a couple of breaches, and we found that a ransomware attack on a typical small company, 25 to 30 people, might only take 2 or 3 days to get to return to operations, but would take an average of 18 days to return to normal operations because of the ongoing impact of the breach and the need to catch up while you're also trying to run the business. And that's the recover part. The respond part is, hopefully you have cyber insurance. If not, we can help with that. But you need to manage. They might demand forensics. They might demand inclusion of law enforcement, which can mean they taking your computer systems as evidence for their own forensics. And you need to manage that process. But you're also going to need to address your customers, how you communicate with them, your marketing message. You're going to have to deal with regulatory compliance in most states, as well as legal issues, and taking steps to minimize your financial liability to your vendors, your clients, and to end consumers if that's appropriate. So respond and recover is more than just, hey, get back up and running. It's how do you deal with the financial and business and legal issues involved in having been the victim of a cyber attack. And so when we talk about strategy along this, we like to use the good, better, best model. Now, recently we did a blog post in a shorter webcast in our Coffee and Cloud series that talk about 5 questions that we know if you answer it. And our cyber insurance partner DataStream did an analysis of over 8 million policies and said if you're a small business and you can answer these 5 questions successfully, then you're going to save. You'll get underwritten for cyber insurance and you'll save. And that's sort of like the very basic of what you need to be doing for cybersecurity. When we look at good, better, best model, we talk about basic security, what's preferred, and what's considered best practice. And the key isn't doing everything best practice. It's really understanding the industry you're in, the size of your business, what your exposures are, what your risk level is, and also what your budget is, and picking solutions that are good, better, or best to meet those needs and to address the priorities. And from a big picture, we recommend stepping back and saying, hey, if you're well protected against the most common types of cyber attacks, hitting your style, type, size, industry, business, as well as protect against the less common attacks that have a greater or the greatest financial impact on your business should you become a victim. If you focus on those 2 areas, you're going to have an affordable, well-balanced, reasonable security profile that should do well to serve you well and protect your business well. And so let's look at some examples. So we talk about email security. A basic is in what we covered in that in that blog post and other content we've produced. A basic is that email users and administrators should have multi-factor authentication enforced, not an option. You want to protect those accounts. Why? Because compromised email accounts are one of the leading vectors of cyber attacks. And those can lead not just to ransomware, but which is the most common form still of cyber attack on small and mid-sized businesses, but can lead to business email compromise, which can be the most expensive, in that you've got someone who's able to alter emails or send emails from your company who can instruct customers to divert payments to other sources, or even instruct your financial team to send checks or wire transfers to places they shouldn't go. Doing that along with what we see as basic is advanced threat protection to pre-screen emails for phishing attacks and other risks, validating senders, matching the content, matching links to the claimed vendor. There's a lot of intelligence. There's another example. At a preferred level, it's going beyond the basic DNS entries, which is domain name service. That's the service that tells people how to reach you on the internet. And so we have MX or mail exchange records that say how to route mail to you. there's a sender policy framework or SPF record that basically says, hey, when you receive a message from me, you can validate that I'm sending it from the right IP address. Now, IP addresses are easy to spoof. So there are two additional protocols. DKIM is a certification protocol that can help ensure that the recipient knows the content of an email hasn't been tampered with. And DMARC combines SPF and DKIM and some other factors to really validate you as a sender. And so the recipient knows that you're a validated sender, and you're actually telling them what to do if for some reason your email doesn't look good. DMARC sends a report back to you. Most people don't monitor those. Best practice would be to monitor those reports because it can, one, help you improve email deliverability. Two, it can help indicate if someone's trying to use your identity, either individuals' email accounts or your domain in cyber attacks, which can damage your reputation. Or three, you've got valid emails being flagged as spam and you want to make those adjustments as well. So again, good, good, better, best, basic, preferred, best practice here. Next, we look at backup recovery. We actually prefer to take a continuity approach, and this really gets into business resilience. And so very basic level, it's things like, hey, for your on-site systems, your backup should go off-site or be in the cloud, and you should be backing up your data in Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. And yes, I know Microsoft and Google back up your accounts, but it's not to protect your data. It's to make sure the service works. So both Microsoft and Google Workspace have what's known as a joint responsibility or shared responsibility model, which says they're going to protect the service and the application. It's your responsibility to manage permissions and protect the data. So just as you have a file server in a computer room or in a data closet, you want to back that up in case something happens with the server. You want to back up your content in Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, and even other services like Salesforce or HubSpot, so that should something happen, overwrites, accidental deletes, other form of data corruption, if you're using the OneDrive desktop client or the Google Drive desktop client, ransomware will follow those links and encrypt what's up in Google Drive or in OneDrive or SharePoint File Services. You want to make sure you can get that data back and not have to pay that ransom. Now, preferred, you take it up and you say you make sure those backups are immutable storage, which means they're separate, they're not part of your operating system or environment and can't be edited. We've had situations where people had a backup server and that got hit by the same ransomware as their live servers, and the backups became unusable. You want to avoid that. And certainly you should be validating and testing your backups to make sure you can restore and you know how to do so effectively and efficiently. And then best is really where you get beyond that recovery into continuity, where it says, hey, I'm grabbing images of my systems periodically. So if something really bad happens, I can spin them up in an alternate data center or a cloud data center as part of a service and get that return to operation happening in hours rather than days. And let me continue running the business in a way that even says, hey, if hardware needs to be held without change for forensics, I can get a different device with a web browser, have access to that virtual desktop that's an image of my laptop, be up and running, service my clients, get the work done, get the invoicing out, while all of that response and recovery work happens in the background. Another area we look at, good, better, best, basic, preferred best practice is with devices and networks. So clearly we recommend maintaining endpoint security services on all servers and end user computing devices. So this is looking for that malware, looking for spam. Next gen endpoint relationship is, endpoint management is better because it's going to look at heuristics and it's going to look at behavior. So you open a file, is something happening that shouldn't happen? Can it stop it and roll it back? And here, basic would be using MFA again for all admin and remote access accounts as well. A step up from that in the preferred, you start getting into things like deploying a managed detection response service, which goes beyond saying, hey, there could be something wrong with this endpoint, to reporting it back into an operations center in which actions can happen. Sometimes in an automated fashion, such as shutting off a system, isolating it from the internet, shutting down applications, locking files, notifying people that this is happening, so that should there be a breach or something starting, you prevent it from spreading and you can do initial response and maybe even prevent it from having an impact altogether. And you step that up And the best practice says, okay, now let's make sure we're remotely monitoring and managing all those devices so that we're aware of system updates, we're controlling system changes, and we can address any security issues directly. And so again, what you need and what's appropriate for your level of business, varies greatly based on the nature of your business, the nature of your IT environment, your risk profile, and how you operate. So for example, a sole practitioner who's operating off of one laptop and using only the Windows operating system and SaaS services, remote monitoring and management may not be necessary so long as you've got your Windows updates configured properly, because that's really all you're only really running Windows on everything else. Everything else is in the cloud, and making sure browser updates happen. So for example, you might not need a full remote monitoring and management suite. You can spend a little less money and just know that you've got good processes in place to keep the system updated, and should something happen, someone's going to respond and help you. When we take a look at another vector to look at is encryption, access, and permissions. In a basic level, we always recommend that for email, you've got domain to domain or server to service email traffic is using the transport layer security. That's a fundamental, very basic level of encryption. We recommend you set it up that says, as the sender, if the recipient can receive the encrypted message, you're going to send it that way, but not necessarily block recipients who won't accept encrypted messages. And we want, and here's where you sort of have to step in, because HIPAA, PCI DSS, FINRA, SEC rules, other industry standards that you might need to adhere to might require you to do this. But we recommend that you ensure you encrypt your systems and data as needed to comply with those industry and regulatory requirements given your business. And a preferred stepping that encryption is saying, any sensitive data at rest everywhere, including mobile devices and laptops. Now, it's really common for data encryption to be, data to be encrypted in motion, right? We go to HTTPS websites for our SaaS applications. We may have the additional security of a VPN to connect remotely into the office or up into the cloud that's guaranteeing a level, right? But having it at rest is important, and then making sure that all data information is encrypted externally and internally in transit becomes a best practice. Similarly, you might look and say, hey, my disks on my laptops are encrypted, but there are times I'm sending a message where I need that specific email encrypted, and I want the user to verify themselves before I let them see the content. And so message level and document level encryption, some industries it's required, and others it's seen as a best practice. Again, there's a cost associated with this. You need a service to help you do that and manage it. So when you think about basic preferred best practice, we help you assess your risk, pick your level of what you need in each of these vector areas, if you will, and determine what the appropriate level is. And finally, we want to talk about the human factor, right? Because the only way to truly secure your IT, your information, your systems, your data is not to let anyone touch it, right? The human factor is the weak link in the chain, so to speak. And so at a very basic level, there are three things we strongly recommend. One, have policies that define appropriate use of company IT systems and services. This sets expectations with your employees and even contractors on the level of their individual level of responsibility for proper human behavior in using systems to avoid creating security problems and understanding how to respond, and making sure that their use of the systems is appropriate and won't trigger issues that will cause you problems down the road. You should, at a very basic, communicate common security risks and how they should respond. And this is the do this, not that type of training. They're actually very inexpensive services that provide that training on a periodic basis to keep it fresh and current, and can even send fake spam and fake phishing emails to test to see if people are paying attention and see if they're going to get caught. If they are caught in one of these fake phishing attacks, they're educated on what they did wrong and why, and how to avoid that in the future. Cyber insurers look at small businesses, and they generally say, if you've got policies and procedures that, for example, require authorization and validation by 2 employees for transactions over $25,000 or some other amount that's appropriate to your business, that's a good thing, because what's that saying is, if someone in your finance team or your accountant, your controller gets an email or an invoice that looks real, or gets updated payment instructions from a vendor that that information gets validated by that individual and a second person before you act on it to make sure you haven't been phished or compromised, and you're not actually going to send the money to the wrong place and still owe the money to your real vendor. Stepping up for preferred, we talk about that security awareness training. That's a preferred solution beyond just informally talking to your employees about it, because that provides that regular reinforcement and the education updates as the risks and the behaviors that are needed change a little bit. And certainly having at least annual training for key personnel about fraudulent invoicing and transfer schemes. These are very popular types of attacks now, centered around business email compromises for small and mid-sized entities, and requiring some sort of out-of-band authentication before executing an electronic payment. You get an email for a funds transfer, don't call the phone number in the email or the person in the email, call the appropriate contact at that company as a vendor of yours directly and confirm the information, particularly if you're being told that the information has changed or there's updated information you need to take into account. And that the best practice is having that security awareness cadence monthly at least, and testing to see if people are recognizing phishing and fraud and guiding them and educating if they are getting caught in those sample attacks. And then certainly verifying vendor and supplier bank accounts and other information before adding them to your AP systems. So again, even dealing with the human factor, looking at basic, preferred, and best practice across all of these verticals or attack vectors, if you want, matching them to your environment. So what are your next steps? We offer 2 assessments that help you assess where your basic security is right now for your business, and also how your risk profile looks to a cyber insurance underwriter. And so our rapid security assessment, it's a survey you complete. It takes between 3 and 5 minutes. With that, we do some additional research of publicly available information about your IT environment, and we'll come back and say, here are things you're doing, here are things you're not, here's what we recommend, here's a prioritized list and estimated costs to put those in place, and we can then have that conversation about what's the balance between what you need and what you want versus your budget and your level of risk. And the second is a free assessment we do in partnership with DataStream, who's our cyber insurance brokerage partner. They have an assessment that looks at your business in terms of your industry, your size. They do a little bit of public information gathering, and they'll come back and say, here's your type of risk that you're looking to face, or that you're most likely to face, what cyber insurers will be looking for you to have in place. We can take that data and the results of the rapid security assessment, get a good feel for where you're at, and come up with a very recommended dollar conservative, affordable, but appropriate approach. And so with those assessments, we can help you define the value proposition, again, matching your priorities to those services, but also understanding the cost of inaction. And one of the challenges we have, with small business owners, we see it with larger companies as well, is the belief that we're too small to get caught, we're not a target. And the reality is there's certain types of attacks that are geared specifically to small businesses because they're so successful. And so understanding your level of risk and what happens if you suffer a data breach or a hack or a victim of a business email compromise attack can put into perspective the value of having those services and the cost of those services. And so once we've matched priorities to services and have a roadmap of what you might want to do now and or in the future, we can plan out the deployment, the timing, and then execute it, not just rolling it out, but providing education to you and your team so they understand what's going on and how it fits within the work schedule. And so we ask, as always, we offer you to contact us. There's a QR code on the screen, info@cumulusglobal.com or bit.ly/CG intro call, capitalized as presented. We're happy to do a few things. One, if you contact us after the session or after watching this video on demand, we'll give you a referral code where we'll do that rapid security assessment and the cyber insurance risk assessment at no cost. So that's sort of our gift to you for taking the time to be with us live today or watching the recording. We're also happy to discuss your risk profile, your current cybersecurity services, and discuss options that you might have either as individual tack-on services to your current environment or moving into a more managed cloud service environment. If you want to reach out to me directly, best way to get a hold of me is afalcon@cumulusglobal.com. My phone number's there as well, but I'm not great about answering calls and answering voicemails. Best thing to do is send me an email message. I don't have an assistant, so I answer emails. If I'm going to be tied up or I'm out of the office, I will direct a member of my team to get back to you quickly. So on that, as we approach the end of the half hour, I'm opening it up to any questions. Feel free to open that questions window using the tab on the top or right-hand side of the screen. For those of you watching on the recording, I'll cut off the recording in just a moment, but I want to say thank you for doing that. And again, reach out to us, connect with us. We can provide you that referral code and get you those 2 assessments at no charge. You spend 3 to 5 minutes giving us some data. Within it can take 2 to 3 days for us to do all the analysis and get the report back to you, and we'll schedule time to walk through it and answer your questions. So thanks for joining us here today. Hope this was a great session for you, and look forward to you joining us again in the future.